like to introduce Damu. He's the president of the Atlanta user group.
No, actually, I'm president of the healthcare chapter, virtual chapter for healthcare and SQL Server. So, and I also head the data management group for in general data modeling. And I'm a BI professional for the past few years. Used to be a DBA before, and now I'm going to BI. So how many guys here do BI here? Like anybody, what kind of technology, like DAX, PowerPivot, or more of the data warehousing? Have you used PowerPivot before in Excel? And anybody using SQL Server in Tabular mode for data analysis? So this is going to be mainly I'm going to concentrate, on the PowerPivot side of it and using how you can use DAX and what are the capabilities of DAX that are available in PowerPivot for you to use the data analysis. With respect to how many guys here do a lot of programming? And most of them are like financial analysis, or what is the role that you do? Insurance. So you can basically you can use data analysis in any kind of scenario. You take it like operations, or you do financial analysis, or insurance, any kind of a vertical you are in. You can pretty much do data analysis and kind of grab your to get answers for specific questions that you're trying to answer for the business. So this will be more on the business focus and system focus. So DAX, what is so this is about me. So if you need to get in touch with me, get in touch with me. Use the Google site to be able to get the slides and everything. I'll post it there. Okay, so today's agenda is what we're going to talk about is what is DAX and what are the different functions that are available. How is it different between Excel and DAX? DAX is primarily used in Excel, but in Excel you have an add-in that you need to add. Like if you're using Excel 2010, you have to add the PowerPivot add-in, and then if you already have Excel 2013, then you don't need to add it. It's already built into the Excel. So if you guys use Excel, then that's pretty much it. You can use everything for your data analysis. And what it can do for data conversions, and main thing that you want to understand is DAX is like you can create a data model inside Excel and then use that in DAX, and then in some situations where you need to do context sensitive switching inside the queries that you can do in DAX, which you'll not be able to do in Excel. And I'm going to show you some of the useful functions in DAX as well. So we're going to cover primarily on a one-on-one level, to understand what and how you can use it in Excel, or if you're using tabular model in SQL Server, which is analysis services engine that runs for your data analysis. In SQL Server, you have two options. One is to install analysis services in a multi-dimensional mode, and the other one is in a tabular mode. Tabular mode is more like a relational analysis engine, but multi-dimensional is more like in a cubical analysis. That's the main difference between those two. But we are not going to cover most of the tabular mode today. So what is the data analysis? When you talk about data analysis, what you can do with the data is to answer the business questions, like how is the sales for this year versus last year, and how is the trend, how is the growth, year-over-year growth, and what are the different products that are selling very well in the last 5 years but not now. So these are the different types of questions in a retail scenario that you can think of. Like in a healthcare situation, you can say like how the patients, that are coming in, whether they're coming in, within the last 72 hours back to the hospital, for some situations, how many patients are coming in and what are the payer types versus like what kind of, insurance mix that we're getting, those kind of situations in the healthcare scenario. And in the insurance, pretty much you can say, what is the claim rate in this area versus this area, based on some certain situations. So those kinds of things, that is what the data analysis will cover, to give answers to the business users that we're looking for. And then what are the tools that are available for data analysis? One is Excel, primarily 1.3 billion users of Excel around the world. So pretty much most of the people who use Excel will do some kind of data analysis with it. Either they're trying to sum up some data for a particular department or something like that, or they use they'll create some reports out of it or dashboards out of the Excel. That's one thing. And then the other side, on the IT side, when you'll see people writing reports on SSRS and people writing Power View reports in dashboards, and if they're using a lot of multidimensional data source, then they'll go for performance point for their analysis to write reports. So those are the areas that mainly they use in the IT side, but you need an IT person doing it. But whereas when they do it in Excel, you don't need an IT person doing it. So you can pretty much use an average Excel pro can pretty much do whatever it needs to be done. They can do prototype, and then if that's being used primarily by the organization by multiple users, they can write it as a report and giving it to the giving that model as a report to the IT person, and they can write the report for them. So those are the different things that they do. And recently, everybody talks about big data for data analysis. That's for like volumes of data more than 2 or 3 terabytes of data if you have, and if you have to do data analysis from multiple sources, people start using big data in the Hadoop clusters. So that's another area that is being available. So those are the 3 different types of platforms that are covering the analysis for users of the analysis in data. So what is DAX? DAX is a short form of data analysis expressions. It's a new language that's formed by Microsoft, especially to use in Excel and in tabular mode. So data analysis, the DAX is very simple to use because MDX, when you talk about multidimensional queries, when you have to write it in MDX, it's very, very complex to do. A lot of queries, a lot of users are not able to understand how to write MDX. So that's why they formed a new language which is pretty similar to the Excel base, the Excel functions, to make use of most of the Excel functions and then add more power to it. So it's like Excel on steroids, that's what they call it, for PowerPivot and DAX. And it's very easy to learn, for users. When you know some simple functions in Excel, you can pretty much start putting things in DAX. And now in the recent version of SQL Server, which is SQL Server 2010, 2012, and 2014, they added the capabilities of DAX, the same language that's being, you can use that in the multidimensional mode as well. So multidimensional mode, you can query using DAX. You don't have to write MDX, and you can start using DAX. So basically, who needs DAX? DAX, anybody who's a power user of Excel can definitely use DAX in any form. And then, like all the report writers in the company who uses SSRS, they can use DAX as well. And of course, the data analysts, which are VA power users, that they can use DAX. what it contains. Like when you talk about DAX, it's like a language which has to have some constructs for doing, data conversions, data typing, and all those things. So in that situation, what DAX contains is pretty much most of the Excel functions that you can see. But when you talk about Excel, you have to think about Excel as a one sheet, and you have to address all those individual columns or individuals in a cell by cell basis. Whereas when you talk about DAX, DAX is like an analysis services engine running inside Excel, where you can import that data and then import all the data what you want and convert. You can start using DAX to write your queries on a context-sensitive basis, on a row by row, rather than cell by cell. So that's the main difference between those two. So it contains like regular any functions that you can see in SQL or any type of language. You can see filter functions. You can see like math functions, statisticals, and the text functions. Of course, one of the primary benefits of using DAX is for the date and time function that is built in. You don't have to do all kinds of calculations, adding dates, multiplying, from one to the other, converting and trying to see, how many days passed. This one. So all those things are built in Excel. So those are the things that are covered in the time and interleaving functions that are being used. So what's the difference between DAX, Excel and DAX functions? So when you think about DAX, you are trying to see on a column by column basis, because you can consider DAX as a simple table of values. So in that situation, when you talk about Excel, since it's being cell based, whereas here it's based on the column. The entire column of data is considered as one data type, and it returns table of data. When you do functions in DAX, it returns a set of it returns a set of rows as a table. For either it could be one or multiple rows. Whereas in Excel, when you call a function, it's always one value. It's not going to return a table. So here you're manipulating the same data in a more compressed format, as well as it's going to be available on a large volume. And then one of the important things that it is available in DAX is, well, in Excel you cannot tie relationships between two cells or two columns. Whereas in DAX, since it's more like a table in a construct from the database perspective, you can use functions such as related and related tables to go from one to the other, one table to the other table, and get the data from the other one related to this row. It's like a parent and child or parent and foreign key relationship that is being used there. So when you say, like, when you have a product table, and if you have a subcategory and product category table, what you can do is you can traverse the relationship from product to the category to the subcategory and get all those related data from the other tables for each row in your main table, which is your product. So you can flatten out your tables, the way you wanted, getting all the data from one to the other. So any questions so far? Like anybody has any questions?
We're in a security-based curriculum here at ITT in their bachelor's program. So my only question would be, you brought up healthcare, like using the DAX to run queries against the healthcare database. What is built into it to ensure HIPAA compliance with any results that may come through?
So when you talk about healthcare, you have you have to secure your data through the healthcare, the HIPAA compliance guidelines. What you need to do, first thing you need to do is put controls on your database to have the proper security measures to who can get your data for, doing data analysis, there shouldn't be, all of the users in the company should not be accessing all the things in the servers,
Right.
that the data is. So in this situation, what you can do is you can create Active Directory groups inside your source databases to control who can access what. And then when they access this from your Excel, you can limit what they have access to. So those users in that particular Active Directory, they can get only those tables and only for those columns of data that they can get. So you can secure your data based on the roles inside the database, and that will trickle down to Excel. And in Excel, the other option you can have is you can turn on there's a rights management in Excel, which you can turn on where the people, even when they're doing some kind of data analysis, they cannot save that data into a local machine and then take it away from there. So that's another thing. The rights management will save you in the particular rights.
Okay. Question?
It said that you can use DAX in SQL. Does it have to be over tabular model, or can it be over the analysis services model?
Yeah, now the latest version of the patches that they've, cumulative updates that they've done, you can do across their multidimensional model as well. So you can use in both.
Can you mix it with the MDX, or
No, you cannot mix
write
it in
DAX,
DAX.
or write-
You have to write it in DAX. You cannot mix those two together in the same query.
Okay.
But you have to do either DAX or MDX. So how do you address the data element in DAX? It's pretty much like, let me show you one simple example. Okay, so now I'm going to start okay, so what I'm going to do is so I'm opening a new Excel worksheet. So what you have is when you have, this is Excel 2011. So when you see Excel 2010, it's really similar to this one, but sometimes you may not have this PowerPivot tab on the top. So if you don't have that tab, what it does is that you need to download that particular add-in from Microsoft. And then, once you add it into your Excel, then it's available to you. So that's the main difference between 2010 and 2030. So when you do that, so what I'm going to do is, so I just started a new worksheet. So here, what I'm trying to do is I'm going to get some data from, let's say, I have a database somewhere. So you can get data from text or Excel files. You can get any, the source of data can be anywhere. It can be an Oracle database, it can be a SQL Server database, anywhere you can get it from. So what you need to do is, so once you click on the so when you have on the regular Excel, you will not see that PowerPivot tab, so you have to click on the PowerPivot tab to go, and you have to click manage to manage the environment in PowerPivot. So what it does is it's basically like bringing up a tabular engine, SQL Server engine behind the scenes for you to play with the data. So here, when you click on the Home tab, this is where you can say, what type of data you're going to bring, and what kind of connections you have, what kind of options you have in terms of the tables that you already have in your PowerPivot. So what I'm going to bring in is a data from SQL Server. So I have a local SQL Server running here in this laptop. So I'm going to get the data from one of the databases that is available, which is using the VirtualWorks data warehouse database from the samples, Microsoft samples. So you get the data from. So here, what you see is all the the tables that you're allowed to get the data from. It's based on your security. So in the healthcare environment, particular users have access to some tables, but not all tables. You will not see all the tables here, but you will see only the ones that are available to you to access. So what you're trying to do is basically you're trying to get data from the tables. So I'm going to go and get data from a table here called internet sales. So here, as you see, like in data warehouse situations, you have facts and dimensions. Facts are your measures that, like numerical measures, like your sales amount and sales quantity, and all those numbers. And then you have those things tied back into other tables called dimensions, which you can use for slicing and dicing your data. Like let's say one could be a product, and the other one could be a salesperson, like that. So different things that you can slice and dice your data. So when you have that available, so what you can do is, so when you select a table, if you want to, if your database already has some kind of relationships built into the database, what you can do is instead of you going through and selecting each and every one of them, you can click this select related tables, and then that's going to go to all the other tables that has relationships built in, like from your fact table to the dimension tables, and it's going to bring all the data from the other related dimension tables. Only thing is, one catch here is when you click on the select related tables, what it does is it's going to bring you the data from only first level dependencies. It's not going to go like, we have some tables that are traveled like 2 or 3 times, in a hierarchical situation. It's not going to bring you the data back. So you need to go and bring those data from the database on your own. So here, what it does is, so the fact internet sale has got a row called product subcategory, whereas product subcategory is tied back to the database on 2 different levels. One is it has to go to the product category and then go to the subcategory. So it's not going to bring you that. So what you need to do is you got to find those tables and bring on your own, because they are like in a multi-level hierarchy. So I'm going to bring all the data from those tables. So what it does is basically this SQL Server analysis engine, which is inside the Excel, it goes and grabs the data from the database and puts it into the tabular model here inside the PowerPivot. So now you have all those, so you have the data from your database copied forward into your Excel. But think about this. I mean, when you copy databases, tables from databases, they are pretty large. But when it comes into the PowerPivot, it's compressed. So even like if you have a gig of data or like millions and millions of rows in your SQL Server, When it comes into the PowerPivot, it is compressed almost like 78%. So you have like, you don't have to worry about the space as much as you used to for your data analysis. So whereas like if you just import this data into a regular Excel sheets, then it's not compressed. It's just in full form. So if you see like different, it brings in the column names, and then it brings all the data related inside those tables. Here, what you have options is like, so when you look at the fact table, which is your numerical, all your numerical measures like, amounts, like unit price and all those stuff, everything is there, but all those data is tagged back to the dimension tables using the keys in numerical values. So here you don't see any kind of flattened out table here when you start with. So here, if you want to address a particular column, let's say you want to create a new column based on this. So what you do is basically you have to start with this, and then you just say your column name. So you start with the square bracket, and you already list all your column names, and you can create your own columns based on the columns that are existing inside the PowerPivot table. So I can say, okay, so I'm going to take this order date, and I'm going to copy that. That gets gets into a new column. So so that's how you address the the columns from inside this particular table. You don't have to, when you want to, let's say you go to the other table, so here, if you have a text-based columns, then you can always say that, you can, if you want to concatenate and create a new column somewhere with the, you can use the text functions inside the DAX. So let's say I want to create a column which has the product component key and this one. So I can do. So always when you're creating a column, you just start with an equal sign. That's a standard way of doing functions in DAX. When you want to do DAX functions, you always start with the same, the equal sign, and then you start with the column name. So I'm going to do alternate product alternate key plus new product name. So when you want to combine those two columns and then create a new column out of it, what you have to do is basically you add those two, concatenate those two columns, and then create a new column. So this is how you can add more columns to your table, and you can flatten out your tables from one table to the other using the use relationship column functions, and then you can get columns from one table to the other as long as you have your relationships defined here. So when you want to refer to that table, from a different, let's say I'm creating another column here, but I'm referring to so when you want to refer to a particular column in another table, you have multiple tables like a sheet aligned between the PowerPivot, right? So when you want to refer to another column in another table, you just prefix it with the table name, and then within square brackets you can put a column name, whatever the column that you're referring to, and it's available right there for you. And the tick mark ones is basically like if your table name has got spaces or some special characters inside, you just you have to use the tick marks, like the tick mark table name, and then you can use the column down there. So this is what I mean for writing your DAX queries across to use it in the tabular modeling SQL Server. What you have to do is you have to wrap all your queries with an evaluate function. Evaluate, and then you write your query, and that's for your writing inside your SSRS, or when you're writing queries in SSMS, Management Studio or anything like that to access the table, access the data from the multi-dimensional or the tabular mode. So you have to use the evaluate function there. Where do you use DAX is of course in Excel when you're using PowerPivot, and then the other option is to use in SSRS. So instead of writing regular table queries, if you want to go access multi-dimensional data or tabular data, you can write your DAX queries inside SSRS, the query window, and then go across those engines to get the data for you. And then the other option you use the DAX is in Power View. So when you're writing visualization queries, data visualizations, like charts and everything inside for deploying it on the SharePoint site, you can use Power View to do that. Have you used anyone use Power View here?
Did you miss SSAS Tabular? Did you use DAX in that as well, right?
Yes. Yeah, you can now in the latest, if you have the cumulative update, I think 9, you can write DAX queries against SSAS Tabular as well as multi-dimensional. So in DAX, what are the two things that you can do with DAX? One is DAX, you can create columns inside your tables, like the ones that I showed you in here. You can create new columns inside your tables. So these are called like tables inside the PowerPivot, and there you're creating new columns like this using DAX expressions. So here what you do is when you create a new expression, you can always, it starts out with calculated column 1, so you can just go rename that column to whatever you want, like product name. So when you refer to that column, it will be, you can use your own custom names for it. So when you create a new name, in this kind of situation, what happens is the data is persisted inside the tables. So it's not like a dynamic query; it's written every time when it is run. So the data is persisted inside the tables in the tabular model field. So the other one, so what it does is basically materialized inside the tables. And when you create new columns inside the tabular each table, what you can do is you can use those columns in your slicers. When you want to use, if you want to slice and dice by the new column that you created, the product name, which is a different one than what is inside the actual table, you can use that for slicing and dicing the data. And but one thing to note is for each, in Excel, what you can do is you can create a function and change your thing based on particular cells, even on a particular column. Whereas in DAX, when you're dealing with the table, you cannot do that. You have to, it's based on the columns. So anytime you change something, it is applicable at the column level for the entire column. It's not cell-based, it's a row-based. And so the other things that you can do with the DAX is, DAX formulas is create measures. What do you mean by a measure? A measure is like something that calculated value for a particular situation. It could be like the total amount of the sales, or it could be total units that are being sold, or, let's say the percentage of total sales versus the current product subjects, category, products that are being sold. So you have options to, write your own measures, which is basically like a numerical value that you're looking for a particular situation. So when you calculate, those measures are not materialized inside the table. So when you create a new, let me show you one, how you can do. Let me do. Okay, so when you create a new measure, how you can create measures is, let me go into the sales, factory net sales, which is our numerical value table. What you need to do is when you create a measure, which is a numerical value, you have to create in the measure window. So at the bottom, you see this is your actual table of data, but here are the columns where columns are, cells in which you can write your own measures. Like let's say I want to create a new measure called total value of sales. So what I need to do is I know today I'm creating a total sales, and then I'm going to use a sum function, and then say I'm going to use the sales amount. So here, what I'm trying to do is I'm creating a measure called total sales, which is the sum of all the sum of all the sales amount in the particular, in the worksheet, in this tabular worksheet. So what it does is basically it creates a new measure. So even though it is applicable to one particular column, you can create it under the column, or you can create it anywhere which is easily accessible. I usually put it on the leftmost so that I have all my measures defined in one particular place, which is easy to look up instead of going back and forth on the side. So when you create numerical measures, what it does is it's not materialized inside the table. It's run every time you use that function in any of the pivot tables or report or anywhere you're trying to use. So it's not persisted inside the database. So because those things, the numerical measures are based on the slicers and the filters that you're using, it's context sensitive. So it's not persisted inside the database. And one more important thing is this, is when you create measures, you can only use that in the values column of the pivot table. So let me show you a pivot table. I'm sure everybody uses pivot tables. So when you have the data here, right, what it does is, I'm going to go and create a new pivot table to analyze my data. So I'm going to put it here in the first sheet itself. So what it does is, so when you create, calculated columns inside the table, you can do that in your filters and in your columns and your rows for data analysis. So let's say we go. Here I'm going to take, so one thing is when you're creating measures, it's available in your slicers. For it gets put in the results, the values column. So you can see the total sales is already used. Whatever the measures that you're defining, it's available for you to analyze the data with. So you can say, like, I wanted to analyze the data by year. So since I already have my data table defined here, so now if I wanted to analyze the data by year, what I need to do is, let me show you one more thing here to understand the relationships between the data. So one thing you can see, so if you want to see the relationships between the tables that you imported into the PowerPivot, what you can do is you can click on that related icon at the bottom to just draw your diagram, and you can see what tables are related to where. So when you hover over the relationship, it tells you what kind of columns that are connected here. So you can see here the currency key is connected to this daily currency table, and when you see the customer between the factory unit sales and the customer, you can see the customer key is connected to the customer key here.
So it's only available in 2013, correct?
It's 2010 as well as
Is
2015.
it real?
Right. 2010, you just have to download the add-in for PowerPivot. That's all. So once you have that data available, so here, since let me show you this. In this, see when you see the date, the relationship between the factory unit sales and the dim date table, which is your date table, you see there are like three different relationships that are currently being defined in the database. But when you have the ones that is dotted lines, those are not active relationships. Those are defined there, but it's not the current current scenario doesn't use that one. When you want to make a change, you just go and make that as your relationship. In the relationships, you can just change it to make it active or inactive. So when you see the active button, you will see the dim date and the factory unit sales order date. So order date key is connected to the date key. So here the active relationship is the order date. When you want to change it and analyze by shift date, you just have to go change the connections to and then make this one active, and then make the other one inactive. So that's how you can switch relationships between tables. So that's an easy way to do your data analysis. So since right now the order date is the one that you're looking at. So
Can you create new relationships over here?
yes, you can.
Okay.
Yeah. So here, we know that order date is the one that is connected here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to slice the data by year. So another thing that to look for. So now we slice the data by year, right? What happens? Like they took the amount, even though we defined the measure at the global level. What it does is it takes that global level, applies the filters, and then and then it slices the data out and gives you the results on whatever the way you want it. So when you see that relationship, so now one thing to go back here. So let me go back to the table view. So let's say if I want to instead of going and applying formatting on each and every cell, we can say like for format cells you can do formatting like currency like this. So instead of doing that on every cell, what you can do is you can just apply the formatting to the measure, and it automatically comes here if it's available. So here, when you go back here to your 500 sales, when you click this, and then say format, and I want to format this measure as a currency, but let's say I don't want to do this, I just want just a round of numbers. I can just apply that. And then when I come back here, and it's already applied to all your data is shown with the proper formatted values. So that's one thing. And then if you want to slice the data still further down, let's say I wanted to take the English month name and then put the month name under the rows. So for each month, like how the data is spread out and how we can slice the data in different ways. So that's how we see it. So one thing you see here, the order is not right. The month is like more around the alphabetical order of the month rather than the the actual listing of the month in the year. So if you want to change that one, you go back to your PowerPivot and you choose the dim date, which is your date table, the date reference table. And then what you can do is you can basically, let's say, I'm going to go and find the month. So I'm going to apply the starting right here so that for the month, so I'm going to sort the columns, the English month name, but I can choose a different column to sort it. So since in this table I have the month number, I can use that to sort my data. So I can do is like the day number, month number of the year. So I'm going to sort that by the month number. And once that is done, my data is already sorted. Yeah.
How are you toggling between that, the worksheet?
So you just, so when you toggle between those, you just use your Alt tab.
Well, what's the name of that other application that, you're calling it PowerPivot, but I'm just.
Oh, that's an add-in inside the Excel.
Okay.
So it's operating within the Excel. So it's just one more, you can think it of a sheet, but it's actually an analysis services running inside Excel.
Okay.
An instance of analysis services is running inside.
How do you
So-
launch that from Excel?
From Excel, what you do is basically you go here, click on the PowerPivot, and click Manage.
Okay, thank you.
That's where you can get your So once you change your sort order here, then it automatically the data is sorted here when you get the data from. Okay, so that's how you can apply those measures. The two different types of things that you can create is calculated columns, that is inside the table of the data, and then measures, which is in the measure window box at the bottom of the sheet. You can create those measures. Those measures are across the entire all the tables. So when you define a measure you want, it's available for the entire sheet. You can use it in any of the pivot tables that you're using inside for any of those, even when you're creating, let's say that you are, so you're creating another sheet and you're trying to do a new. So the three different options you can say, okay, I'm going to create another pivot table inside the worksheet. And when you go and look for that measure, it's available in other as well. So you can use those measures across all the sheets. You don't have to define one for each sheet, like what you do in Excel. So,
If you just put the, was it sales amount column? If you just put the sales amount column in that values field? Which,
yeah, that's only doing a sum.
Yeah. What's the difference between those two?
So let me show you the change that you can think of. That's a simple formula that I showed you,
Yeah.
a sum. So there's more powerful things that you can do with the sum. I'm going to show you that. So what are the different data types that are available in DAX? Is pretty much whatever, most of the SQL Server data types is available in DAX because it's a tabular engine that is running inside the Excel, right? So integer, real number, boolean, date, time, functions, currency, all things. So one thing that is one quick thing to note is there is no data type called null. So there is nothing called null inside the PowerPivot or in DAX. It's always blank. So it's either like a blank or some value there. There's no null. It's like a not a value that is available in SQL Server. It's not available in DAX. So always it's blank. When you don't see any value, it's always a blank. So what are the different data conversions that are available inside the DAX? So when it does, let's say in that situation, I added two columns to create a new column. I concatenated two different fields, right? One is a text field, the other one is also a text field. So when I joined those two, it created a new text field. Whereas if I do, let's say I have a numerical value and I am adding that to a text value, you will always get an error when you do it in program anyway. In this situation, what it does is it implicitly converts that numerical value to a text value and then adds that as a text. So whenever you add something to a text, it's always a text. Whenever you add two numerical values, it's always a numerical value. So that's how it manipulates the data conversions, so that you don't have to worry about the errors that are popping up, like what you used to do when you're doing it in programming. And explicit conversion is basically like, let's say you have a datetime function, and then if you want to add that to a text function, a text column. And you have a datetime column and then a text column. So you're trying to concatenate those two, and then if you want to do some kind of conversion on your side before it gets to the data, you can do explicit conversion. Say, okay, convert this to a numerical value, and then you add this to this. Let's say if you want to get a Boolean value from a date, so what you do is you convert that date into a Boolean value, and then you add that to your text column. You will get it in a text format. So you can do explicit conversions, and then automatically, the PowerPivot does implicit conversions for you. So how do you handle like missing values or empty values inside DAX? always you do, you can create blank values using a blank function. So what you do is if, let's say if you were, you check a particular, this is a table, and then this is a column inside the table. So what it does is basically checks if the commission is 0, then you say you want to show blank. You don't want to show a 0 there. So you can just say you can use that blank function to generate a blank value there. That's how it creates a blank function. Otherwise, you say like, okay, because sometimes if you're creating a new column, so by multiplying commission and the sales amount, and you don't want to show 0 there. So in that kind of situations, you can show blank. So how do you handle errors? Like in situations, you can use those two functions called if error, is error. If error, how it does is basically, if the first argument is any kind of an arithmetic function, if that errors out for some reason, it might have some kind of a text value that is in one field, and you're trying to multiply with a number, and it's not able to find anything to show you, then in that case you can say, if there is any error happens in the first argument, you can just show blank. So that's how you can handle errors inside the DAX. This is when you're creating new columns, or even in functions, in the measures, when you're creating new measures, you can replace values with blank. And then like other type of handling error handling is you can use error function. So what it does is basically like if is error for that particular argument, whatever the trying to do the arithmetic expression, you can replace that with a blank. Otherwise, to do this, if you wrap that into a if function, then it automatically applies the error function, and then it shows you the data properly. So I talked about how you can apply the the DAX expressions when you're creating measures. So one important thing in DAX is the context of the calculations that is happening inside for the expressions. So one is the two different types of context is the row context. Where does it apply in the row context? When you're creating a new calculated column, that's where it applies the row context. It's not doing some kind of filtering there. It's just for that row, what is the context, and then the new calculated column is based on the particular row. Where does it apply the filter context? The filter context is like for your measures. When you're creating your measures, you can apply your filters based on the slicers that you put in, or rows or columns, anywhere. So if you look at the this thing, the filter context applies, is based on the filters or the rows, for which the measures, the measures takes that context and then applies to it. Whereas in the row context is, so I'm going to see. So this one is a row context. So it takes row by row. So these are the two different types of context available in DAX when you're creating your measures and your calculated columns. So you first thing you need to understand is how the filter context is applied in DAX expressions. When you think about filter context, what it does is basically, it always operates on the underlying table of data. It's not based on the pivot table at all. Pivot table is just to show your data. But all the things that you pick in the rows, columns, columns or filters or slicers, everything is applied to the base table. So you should not think that based on the, when you think about pivot table, you always think, okay, so based on these columns, I'm picking these data. But what it does is it applies the filter context to the base data rather than to the pivot table itself. That's how it gets your proper data for you. So let me show you some of the. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new, so there's a, normally when you use pivot tables, you always use sum, count, and one of those two, functions to, sum your data or minimum of the rows that are available, maximum of the data that is available. So that's what you do. But whereas in DAX, what you have is a function called calculate. What calculate does is, it takes an argument, which is a function, but you can apply a lot of filters, criteria to it. That's where it changes the power of doing that. Instead of automatically you're adding your things in the pivot table, you create your measures using the calculate function, and then you can apply all your filters right here, and then you can change your context when you're getting your data. So let me show you. So what it does here is, you can see, I'm creating a new measure called amount of sales. And what it does is, I'm using calculate function. And for my calculate function, my argument is sum of the internet sales from this table, and this is the column that I'm summing. So, so here I'm trying to find the total value of sales. So when I do that, what it does, then I'm going to format it. Currency. I don't want to apply any. So here you see the value. One thing to note is once you add a new measure to your any of those tables in there, it's immediately available in your for your calculations. One thing to note in 2010 is what you have to do is you will see a refresh box come up whenever you change your base model, base data, and add new measures or new calculated columns. You have to go and refresh this pivot table. So that's a quirk in 2010, and in 2013 it's automatically refreshed for you. So you can say, okay, I'm going to take that and apply that value here. Let me take the other thing. So now I'm using the same, I'm using the new function that I used with the calculate function and applied that value. So it's basically the same values that you just showed. So what I'm going to do is now, I'm going to say, let's say I'm going to do the same thing about it. I'm going to do only for 2007. So I'm creating a new function called sales 2007. That is only the totals for 2007. I'm applying my filters right here. I'm not applying based on the pivot table. So I'm going to show you that. So here, my first argument is what type of arithmetic function that I'm using inside, inside the calculate, and then this. Further, after the first one, all the things that you mentioned here is your filter context. So here I'm filtering the data by 2007, only 2007. So now if I'm going to go and add here, so I'm adding that to my pivot table. So you will see like since your filter is 2007, it doesn't show any values for any of those stuff because you don't have those already applied that filter to that particular measure, and then it shows you only for 2007. So that's how you can filter your data based on certain criteria. Like if you want to show by type, you can do that. Let's say if you want to see the sales for promotional items or some kind of discounted items, then you can filter those things in the calculation itself, and then you can apply that here. So if I wanted to do for all the years, right? So let's say in this particular thing, if I want to further apply, say it's a month, I wanted to show only for a month, I just add my criteria to, the date. I could do it for a particular month. I see that it's only applied for. And then, want to apply only for that particular month.
Calendar year.
That year, so 2007. So you see, like, even though I applied the filter, but that filter is at the base table level, it's not at the pivot table, so that's why you see the same values repeated for every column. So I picked 2007, so when I picked 2007, it's showing the values for one level.
Would you rather do that as a slicer on the pivot table or the dashboard?
Yeah, you could do it as a slicer too, but what I'm trying to show you is you can apply filters even to the calculate level columns.
Right.
And then use it anywhere.
One of the things that seems to come up a lot in large organizations is that there's this hard balance to strike, I think, between having all the data available and also having your measures relevant to the business. And a lot of times, if you just have all the data available and don't do things like putting the filters in at the calculation level, and you rely on that to happen in the slicer in the report, a lot of times it just doesn't happen, and people end up reporting on the wrong things and just never thought to put those particular filters on. But if you control it at the level of the calculation, you can basically ensure that the right things are happening.
And you're defining those calculations in one place. It's not everywhere, and nobody is creating different things, different places, and which is not the same.
If you have an average as a measure, then does it compute the right way?
Yes, it applies the filters and then it computes those values based on those particular selected criteria.
Okay.
Yeah, it applies those filters before it shows it on your report.
What I'm asking, we did some summation, right?
Right.
Instead of summation, I do an average.
Right.
So initially in Excel, the average will be all wrong because we have to do the summation first.
First and then right, yeah. So in that because it applies in the tabular model, it already calculates those values for you, and then it's available. And then there's another one that I can show you. It's, so here, what you're trying to achieve is you're trying to achieve. Let's say in your calculations, if you want to get a percentage of sales for this month versus the total of all the months together. In that situation, if you calculate, just the sum, it's going to slice the data by the time, and you're not having the total value of the sum to calculate your percentage. So in that situation, what you can do is you can say, I want to calculate my sum of the sales amount, but I want it for all the months in the entire, entire year or entire database to use for percentages. In that situation, you can say, okay, so I'm creating a measure called all month sales, but my filter criteria is bring in everything, total of everything. So don't slice it. So that way, I can use that measure in calculations to calculate your percentage. So you can do that. So here, what you can do is so you can say and then I can do all sales. For all the months together. Now let me take out the other one. So, and then once you have it, you can use that thing to calculate for, let's say if you want to create a percentage of this thing, then you can say, okay, this divided by the total amount of sales, and that will give you the percentage for that year.
Can we do that in the measure level also?
You can do that in the measure level as well. You can create a percentage, basically say, sum of this divided by total of all sales, and then you can use that.
Not that way, like two measures, and you create a third measure.
Third measure, referring
One
back to
measure.
those two measures.
Okay, you
Yes,
can do that.
yeah, you can do that, and then that's available in your pivot table in your calculations. So let's say I'm going to do that. So I have my percentage of sales, amount of sales slash your totals, and that's available. And then you can use that in your then you can slice that by this for the entire year, right? Yeah. So you can basically do that. You can be pretty good measures. And then let's say you want to do the calculate function. I'm going to create a new measure called. So if you wanted to verify whether your recipes, your measure is correct or wrong, then you can just click your check mark, and then you can automatically add that to one of the functions that is available for you to pre-check your measures, just to add the values. So now, let's say I'm going to do so that I'm going to do So I can do if I put that in slicers, what you can do is the selected months is only available. So you can do. So here what you're trying to do is you're trying to calculate the So here what I'm trying to do is I'm referring to another measure here. So you don't have to use a function. So you can define that function in one place, and then you can use that measure again in other measures that you're trying to see. Like, you can create a function for summing up or the count, and then you can refer that measure in other calculations, so you don't have to repeat the same calculations and make changes. If your base calculation changes, you can make it one change, and then that's applied to all the other measures as well. But here, what I'm trying to do is, if I use that, the sales amount in a calculate function, I can try to use, for the selected months based on the slicers. So this sum will apply to only to the selected measures from selected slicer values when you're doing the sum. So. there's other type of functions that are available so one main thing to take away is to have the calculate function. You know, you can do all kinds of, filters in the calculate function. And then that is applied based on the, filter context. And you can use that in your, in Excel or in your reports. So main thing to learn is calculate function is the key, which you can apply to all the other functions and then make, your own functions out of it. So the other things that is available, that is not available in Excel is the time intelligence functions, like for, prior sales, prior month, prior year, if you want to find the data for total sales for this year versus that year, previous year, you can use, sum of all sales amount / prior year, and then you can just give the data as a reference. It will automatically go back and calculate the same thing for the prior year, and it's available to you. This is not available in Excel. You need to do a lot of tricks with the functions to use that. So year to date and prior year to date, all those things are available in DAX. Okay, so one more thing that I want to show is this. So here, this is how we do the previous quarter, the time intelligence functions. Basically, using the same calculate function, supplying the first variable is your first argument is your sales amount, which you are totaling up. But you're trying to find for the previous quarter compared to this quarter. So we use the previous quarter function, and then you supply the date, which date you're trying to use for, and then it automatically applies to that. That's how you get the data for that. And then one quick thing that is very key to this thing is doing distinct values. I'm going to create a new. So instead of putting that in that table, I can actually put it there too. I'm trying to find something. I'm putting it in the totally different sheet of the table.
So you can create the measure in
In any sheet you want. Doesn't matter where it is. The measure name has to be unique.
Okay.
So it's referenced across the entire, because it's an engine that is running. It's not sheet based. So that's how it's available. So that's the thing I want to show you here. Even though this thing refers to the factory unit sales, but actually I'm creating that in the product in a table, and then that is available too. So one thing that is very interesting function that you might use in DAX, which is really difficult to do in analysis services multidimensional, especially when you deal with a large amount of data, is the distinct count. Distinct count is like, let's say you want to create, if you wanted to see how many distinct sales happen for this particular day, between this day and that day, how many distinct customers were purchasing, all those things you can do is you can use the distinct count function to count the rows. In this situation, what happens is the filter count applies to this particular table, and then it takes the values and shows you the data for that. So it's very easy to do with the for finding distinct customers or distinct addresses in a particular situation in insurance. Sometimes you have to do. So those things are distinct patients. How many patients visited in the hospital, even though they might have come morning and evening, you can do distinct counts very easily to do the distinct. So those are the things, and there are some resources that are available. A lot of things, from Microsoft. There's a DAX Resource Center, and I have the link over here. I'll put it up the slides on the website so you can download it. One good, very good book that I can suggest is DAX Formulas by Rob Colley. excellent book, and you will, the 20 bucks you spend on that is well worth it. And then the other thing is, if you are really interested in doing, a lot of tabular modeling, tabular analysis services, tabular modeling, there are a couple of books one by SQL MVP called Pure Ledger, and the other one is by Marco Russo and Alberto Ferrari and Chris Webb. So those are good books that you can refer back to. So, but I'll put this slide on the That's it. Thanks for any questions? Yes.
So if you make all your measures on the PowerPivot screen, and the data source changes, like if the database changes or it's a flat file, how do you update that? Is it just scoops the data and puts it locally when you're doing all this manipulation?
Yeah, everything is downloaded locally here. So if you want to, let's say you do it today, and you get the data from the database and you're done. But all your calculations are still persistent in the PowerPivot. So you can go back and when you go back to your PowerPivot, you can always refresh your data. So if you do refresh all, what it's going to do is basically go back to the data source, bringing back all the new data, including the old data and everything. And then that formulas and all those calculated columns and measures, everything is recalculated for you there.
Okay, so it just truncates what's ever in there and brings
Yes,
it to
it pulls in the refresh data.
Can you do only the recalculate the formula instead of refreshing?
Yeah,
You can do
that.
that.
Yeah, if you do, you can do the recalculate for formulas. As soon as you change something in the formula, it automatically does
Or
it.
it does not work.
You don't have to do any refresh, but if you turn off the refresh, auto refresh, then you can go back and do manual refresh of those formulas.
This is very fast.
It is because, see, the thing is, it is on the tabular analysis, which is tabular mode, which is compressed really well, for this thing. And all these things are based on columns. So a column-based engine is always faster because it's going to, what it does is basically does a distinct columns of distinct rows of the columns, and then it compresses that and stores it in the database as a, it's called an X velocity engine. So that's the thing that is running behind it.
In your experience, what is the biggest data set you have put into a PowerPivot?
I put in one time, I put in about 60 million rows.
60 million?
No issues at all. I mean, I was able to do with an 80 laptop, I was able to do analysis on that. It took a little while to pull the data because it's a lot of rows to get from the server. But once it is pulled in, it's pretty small. And then all these calculations are available. Once you have this in the PowerPivot, what you can do is you can deploy that to your SharePoint site, and that's available to everyone. So when they open this Excel spreadsheet, those calculations and everything is available for them to use. And then the other option is to take this PowerPivot model and store it in the SQL Server as a tabular model. Import that as a, import this PowerPivot into a tabular model project. And it's available as a tabular model, which you can use it in Power View, SSRs, anything you want, whatever you create.
Can you use this PowerPivot for Power View also?
Not the PowerPivot, but you have to create that as a tabular model inside the SQL Server.
So
You import this PowerPivot into a tabular model, and that's available to all the other ones. You can use Power View in Excel too, but more limited functionality. Any other questions? Right, thank you very much. And